John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured all to save. But though he sleeps, his life was lost while struggling for the slave. His soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory,
Welcome
glory,
to
hallelujah.
War of the Rebellion, Stories of the Civil War. I am your host, Leon, and this is a reading of the regimental history under the Maltese Cross, Antietam to Appomattox, the Loyal Uprising in western Pennsylvania. From 1861 to 1865, Campaign's 155th Pennsylvania Regiment, narrated by the rank and file. And we are picking up right where we left off, at Memoirs and Sketches. How sleep the brave, who sink to rest, by all their country's wishes best. By fairy hands their knell is rung, by forms unseen their dirge is sung. In memory of the patriot, soldier, and hero, Gouverneur K. Warren, Major General, USA, died at Newport, Rhode Island, August 8, 1882. The picture above is a facsimile of title page to resolutions on death of General Warren by Western Pennsylvania veterans of 2nd, 3rd, and 5th Corps of the Army of Potomac. The memorial album was formally presented to Mrs. Warren by a committee sent from Pittsburgh. Action on death of General Warren. The death of General G. K. Warren at Newport, Rhode Island, in August 1882, caused many meetings of surviving comrades residing in Pennsylvania, who in the 2nd and 5th Corps of the Army of the Potomac had served under the lamented general. A public meeting was held in Municipal Hall, Pittsburgh, to take appropriate action, and was largely attended. Honorable Robert W. Lyon, Mayor of the city, an honored veteran, President, and introduced General J. Bowman Schweitzer, commander of a brigade under General Warren, who paid an earnest tribute to the bravery and skill of the deceased general. Among the vice presidents of the public meeting was General Richard Coulter of Greensburg, also a commander of a brigade under General Warren in all the hotly contested actions from Wilderness to Five Forks. General Coulter, in a letter, paid an eloquent tribute to the intrepidity and generalship of General Warren, as observed by him personally in the Battle of Five Forks, entitling him to be justly called the true hero of that battle. The survivors of the 155th Pennsylvania Volunteers so long serving under General Warren felt it due his memory that they take special action and, therefore, adopted the following minute. The soldiers of the 155th Regiment Pennsylvania Volunteers, 5th Corps, of the Army of the Potomac, residing in western Pennsylvania, having learned of the sudden and untimely death, on August 8, 1882, of their late beloved Corps commander, Major General G. K. Warren, have met to manifest by public action the magnitude of their loss, and the depth and poignancy of their grief therefore. Resolved, that we esteem it a sad privilege to assemble, as his late comrades, to render to his memory the sorrowful tribute of our respect and love, and in sympathy, if not in person, to lay upon the grave which today closes forever upon his manly form our garlands of affection and the laurel mead of mighty conquerors. Resolved, that in his death the nation has lost a true patriot, who shed his blood and risked his life in her defense. The armies of the United States, an educated and experienced officer who honored and adorned the service of the Fifth Corps of the Army of the Potomac, another of its great commanders who has silently passed away from the camps of the living to join his illustrious compeers: Hooker, Meade, Sykes, Griffin, and Reynolds, in the Valhalla of our consecrated heroes: General A.L. Pearson, Colonel John Ewing, Brevet Major George M. Laughlin, Brevet Major Samuel Kilgore, and Captain A.H. Heisey, on behalf of the surviving field and staff of the regiment, paid affectionate tributes to the beloved general, and were followed on behalf of the rank and file by eloquent remarks from comrades John H. Kerr, S. W. Hill, Charles F. McKenna, John C. Sias, and L. E. McPherson. Corporal Harry M. Curry, by Colonel E. J. Allen. Harry M. Curry was born January 30th, 1847, at Wilkinsonsburg, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, and died May 5th, 1900. Not yet having reached the age of 16, he succeeded in enlisting on August 22nd, 1862, in Company F, 155th Pennsylvania Volunteers, and was discharged from the service at the close of the war by general orders, June 5th, 1865. To look into the face of that gentle, manly boy of 16, clad in the habiliments of war, and to describe with him the trite phrases, quote, "nature's nobleman," and "king among men," unquote, would seem strangely inappropriate. And yet he was all that those phrases imply, and much more, but in a different way. His guileless heart, his unselfish disposition, were visible in his open, genial countenance. He did no wrong, and wished no wrong to any man. To the faults and frailties of his comrades, he was quick and kindly and forgiving, and would even search his memory for some circumstance of extenuation. But he was inflexibly honest in his associations with the men, and exacted honesty in return. Quick of comprehension, he soon learned a soldier's duties, which he performed with the same fidelity that characterized his work in later years in civil life. Brave and steadfast, he questioned not the orders of his superiors, but went where duty called him, whether on the arduous march or into the fury of battle. Although his position on the color guard was more perilous than it would have been in the ranks of his company, he passed through the bloodiest battles of the war unscathed, and it was only at Five Forks, the last fierce conflict, which resulted in the collapse of the Confederacy, that he received a dangerous wound, from which he fortunately recovered. On the return of Harry M. Curry to the walks of civil life, he entered upon his life's work with unabated zeal. His devotion to the work his hands found to do never flagged. By successive steps, he was called to more important fields of labor. Self-seeking was repugnant to his nature. Hence he never sought the influence of friends to aid him in securing honors to which he was not entitled. It was his recognized ability as being the right man for the place that led to his being called to offices of great trust and responsibility. Having reached the high office of treasurer of the great Carnegie Steel Company and become possessed of an ample fortune, Harry M. Curry might have abated his strenuous life and entered upon a life of ease. But idleness, when there was work to be done, afforded him no pleasure. He would not allow his life to rust out. Hence, it could be well said that he died in the harness. His active interest in the welfare of the Regimental Association was exhibited by his cheerful service as treasurer of the organization for 13 years previous to his death. He gave his time, advice, and services amid all his urgent business cares to the duties of the treasurership, which his comrades had annually tendered him. The conduct of his life reflected credit upon his old regiment. The citizen fulfilled the high promise of the soldier. His comrades followed him to the grave, shrouding his coffin with the flag he had guarded so well, knowing that in his last moments no memories were dearer to him than those of the camp and field. The bugle rang out the clear call of "All lights out," as he had heard it many a time ere he sank to slumber, and his comrades left him awaiting the reveille in the rest eternal. Brevet Major George M. Laughlin. The eve of Memorial Day 1909 was selected by the Regimental Association as the appropriate date to deliver to the surviving family of the late Major George M. Laughlin the resolutions adopted by his comrades of the 155th Pennsylvania Volunteers. George Macaulay Laughlin, Military Record. Private, 155th Pennsylvania Infantry, September 2nd, 1862. First Lieutenant, September 5th, 1862. Captain, February 26th, 1864. Honorably mustered out, June 2nd, 1865. Breveted Major, U.S. Volunteers, March 29th, 1865, for gallant and meritorious conduct at the battle on the Quaker Road, Virginia. He was born October 21st, 1842, at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Died December 11th, 1908, at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The proceedings, as published in the Pittsburgh Gazette-Times, in its Memorial Day issue, are herewith reprinted. In memory of Brevet Major George M. Laughlin. Tribute of a Veteran Regiment. Presentations of Memorial Album. Among the foremost among the veterans of the Civil War in this community who passed away since Memorial Day 1908 was Brevet Major George M. Laughlin, who died on the 11th day of December last, at his residence in the city of Pittsburgh. His death removes one of Pittsburgh's best-known citizens and a soldier admired and loved by those with whom he served. On Wednesday evening last, the old comrades of the late Major who were associated with him in that remarkable regiment of Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania Volunteers, the 155th, better known as Pearson's Zouaves, called at the home of his son, George M. Laughlin, Jr., and presented to the members of the soldier's family an album, beautifully finished in every detail, which contained the record of the Major's services in the Civil War from the time he entered as a private until he received his honorable discharge with the rank of Brevet Major. Antietam, Appomattox. The story that the album tells is, in brief, the story of the doings of those days from Antietam to Appomattox, and portraits are shown of Major Laughlin as a youth of 19, when he first put on the uniform of his country, as a major when the time of stress was over, and as the honored citizen, as he appeared shortly before his death. In the album, too, is a portrait of the soldier who sounded taps over the Major's grave. Colonel E.J. Allen, the first commander of the regiment, and who led it in several campaigns, opened the presentation exercises by the delivery of an eloquent tribute to the memory of Major Laughlin as a soldier and a citizen and a Christian gentleman, closing by announcing that Judge Charles F. McKenna, who had served for 3 years in Company E, commanded by Major Laughlin, would make the presentation of the memorial resolutions of the Regimental Association to George M. Laughlin, Jr., Thomas K. Laughlin, and Irwin B. Laughlin, sons of the deceased. The album is one of embossed Old English lettering, the work of Professor W. W. McClelland, and illuminated with the corps mark and colors. It is bound in morocco, and reposes in a case of the same leather. The outer cover bears the dead soldier's monogram, and on the last pages are the autograph signatures of all the signers of the resolutions, which were adopted by his comrades on the day of his death. His wealth forgotten. The resolutions reviewed the career of the dead soldier and laid particular emphasis on the fact that, forsaking prospects unusually brilliant, he enlisted as a private, and endured with his comrades all the rough experiences of the war, and earned his promotion by gallantry of the unusual kind. The resolutions in part follow, with the names of the signers. Through the fortune of war, Major Laughlin was destined to perform in the campaign of General Grant most conspicuous service in both the opening and closing of the series of battles that practically ended the rebellion. On the morning of May 5th, 1864, when the Fifth Corps, commanded by General Warren, leading the advance of the Union Army, penetrated the dense jungles and forests known as the Wilderness, several companies of the 155th Pennsylvania, with several details from other regiments, were ordered to serve on the advanced skirmish line. Captain Laughlin was assigned to the important duty of commanding this advance. These skirmishers were slowly pushing their way through the many obstructions in the dense woods, unable to see the Confederates concealed in the thick foliage, up to which time not a shot had been fired by either side. At Wilderness, ordered first shot. Captain Laughlin, hearing noises from unseen troops, ordered the men in his command to fire in the direction of the noise, to check the advance of the enemy. The skirmishers of the 155th Pennsylvania Regiment promptly obeyed the order and opened fire, to which the enemy responded, and the battle then opened all along the line, and continued with great fury and heavy losses on both sides during the whole day. The distinction of ordering the first shot and the opening of the sanguinary battle of the Wilderness was thus earned by Captain Laughlin. At Appomattox, April 9, 1865, the 155th Pennsylvania was in the advance of the Fifth Corps in pursuit of the retreating Confederate Army, under General Longstreet and General Gordon. In the midst of a severe fire from infantry and artillery, at the final stand made by the enemy, a mounted Confederate courier with a flag of truce rode rapidly across the space between the two armies, and reached that part of the skirmish line held by the 155th Pennsylvania, and explaining his mission, was conducted to General Charles Griffin, commanding the Fifth Corps. At Appomattox, delivered orders to cease firing. General Griffin directed Major Laughlin, then serving on his staff, to ride out to the advanced skirmish line, still under the enemy's fire, and order each regiment engaged to cease firing. In discharging this extremely hazardous duty, Major Laughlin rode along the Union battle line, under the continuous and severe fire of the Confederates, and, returning, reported to General Griffin compliance with his orders. The Confederates not ceasing the heavy fire, the general at once ordered Major Laughlin to return to the advanced skirmish line, and deliver to each command orders to resume firing. These orders were delivered by the major, and firing was at once renewed by the Union skirmishers, and continued until the firing along the Confederate line ceased. Major Laughlin was then dispatched to the battle line with General Griffin's final orders to all of the regiments to cease firing. No hostile shot was fired by either army after these last commands. The peace at Appomattox was assured by these final orders delivered by Major George M. Laughlin. The field and staff officers and 2 comrades from each company signed the resolutions. The comrades who took part in the presentation, in addition to those named, were Colonel S.W. Hill, President, Regimental Association; R.P. Douglas; John H. Kerr; Charles A. Walters; D.E. Lyon; Thomas E. Morgan; John T. Porter; Colonel John Ewing; and Captain A. H. Heisey, all of whom made appropriate addresses. Messrs. Morgan, Douglas, and McKenna were the only survivors of Major Laughlin's company present. Colonel John H. Cain. Minute, adopted by Regimental Association of the 155th Pennsylvania Volunteers, Pittsburgh, September 3, 1903. The surviving members of the 155th Regiment Pennsylvania Volunteers have learned, with feelings of unfeigned sorrow, of the sudden death of our late comrade, Colonel John H. Cain, who yielded up his gallant spirit at his home in Franklin, Pennsylvania, on Wednesday morning, April 29, 1903, and is now enrolled in the battalion of our immortal dead, in the shining camps above. On April 25, 1861, as a private in Company K, 12th Pennsylvania Volunteers, 3 months' service, Comrade Cain entered the Union Army in the Civil War. He recruited and was chosen captain of Company C, 155th Regiment Pennsylvania Volunteers, on the 22nd of August, 1862, and in the regimental organization, on September 2, 1862, was elected and mustered in as major. He took part with the regiment in its first battle at Antietam, displayed conspicuous valor in Humphrey's charge at Fredericksburg, and on December 31, 1862, was promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel. He was in command of the regiment in the battles of Chancellorsville and Gettysburg, acquitting himself with rare gallantry and skill. At Gettysburg, he formed his line of battle on the very crest of Little Round Top, and on July 2, 1863, he held this eminence against the repeated charges of the enemy under Longstreet and Hood. Towards the close of the day, he sent out a skirmish line clearing his front and driving the rebel sharpshooters from Devil's Den. The steady courage and soldierly qualities exhibited by Colonel Cain in this battle won the respect and admiration of his men and the commendation of his superior officers. On July 22, 1863, he was promoted to the rank of colonel of the regiment. After retiring from the army, Colonel Cain removed to Franklin, Pennsylvania, where he became extensively engaged in the production and refining of oil, and his active interest in all public matters made him a leading citizen of the place. By his considerate treatment of the men in the ranks, he won rather than compelled their obedience, and his kindness of heart tempered the harshness of discipline. Quote, "Heroic spirit, take your rest. You are richer, we are poorer. But because you have been with us, life is manlier, heaven surer." Unquote. And we will pick up with Brevet Major General A.L. Pearson's regimental tribute at the next episode next week. Thank you for listening, everybody. Let's get into some show notes, shall we? It's going to be very interesting. since we are just now kind of reading Regimental Association obituaries for these gentlemen when they were in their old age, which is kind of full circle. All right, here we go. All right. When I get into my notes, I don't think I need to introduce Gouverneur K. Warren at all. But for those who don't know much about him, and maybe only in this history, it's safe to say that he was a great American soldier in the Army of the Potomac, and his heroism and deeds of valor are well known and documented. And I will leave it at that. But if you come to my website at rebellionstories.com for this episode's photos, I will have a link to a documentary about his life. So if you don't know much about him, you can swing by and give it a listen. As far as Corporal Harry M. Curry goes, I can only hope that one day my own friends and family can ever begin to describe me in my life as nature's nobleman, or to be a king among men. That is a great honor to be given, especially by so many wonderful people in this 155th Regiment. A title, of course, he earned and was well deserved. We have some info about him that we found from the Carnegie Steel Company that still exists, including some newspaper clippings and some other things. Man, what a life. Just really cool. Now, as far as Brevet Major Laughlin goes, this guy was a certified badass, excuse my language, to come in to the Army as a private and rise to a general's staff member. Well, that's not just luck, is it? And to also know that he ordered the first shot, at least in this area that they were fighting in, at the Battle of the Wilderness is incredibly cool. And then, of course, his heroism to get the ceasefire enacted. How many people did he save? Especially by putting his own life in so much danger. Now, however, when we talk about Colonel John Cain, he also entered in as a private in the spring of 1861, by the way. And by the summer of 1863, found himself leading a regiment at Gettysburg, which is just insane. I'm just floored. I'm trying to think about how much of my own brain was developed as a private. I also had that rank. And if after such years of service, if I would have been prepared to lead a regiment into battle, I could not fathom that happening today. But it's just incredible. Just an incredible career. Anyway, I know it's not very long, but those are the end of my notes. I would like to thank everyone for dropping by to listen to the latest episode. This is always a great pleasure of mine to read to you guys. Very glad that you're listening. And I'm glad to get back into the swing of things now, even though we're drawing towards the end of this history. So, thank you for listening. Please rate the podcast on whatever app you are listening on, and maybe hop over to the YouTube channel for some additional content. I worked really hard on the stuff that's up there. I do want to announce that on Saturdays, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I will always be streaming War of Rights with my regiment, the 30th Ohio, as we fight against the Confederates on battlefields from the Antietam campaign. It's every Saturday, and you can feel free to stop by War of the Rebellion, my YouTube channel, which is at War of the Rebellion 4761. Yes, it is War of the Rebellion 4761. If you type that into the YouTube search, I will pop right up. And please subscribe. I can see how many of you come to my YouTube channel and don't subscribe, okay? Please, it helps. All right. Well, anyway, now that I'm back in the swing again, I've restarted some of the projects I was working on, and I'm going to be working on getting those out. I'm really excited for spring. And, of course, one of the things that I would like to do is when I go on a hike this spring, in my Civil War gear on a trail, I will be taking my phone in a harness, and I will be live streaming. So I will be able to read what you guys are talking about at the same time that we're kind of marching along. So kind of interesting, something I've been thinking about, but I do it anyway already, and it's lonely. It's just me by myself, so no one else wants to walk, that many miles in a row. So anyway, take care to all of you. Stay safe. Thank you for listening, and bye-bye.
Old John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured all to save. But though he sleeps, his life was lost while struggling for the slave. His soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. John Brown was a hero, undaunted, true, and brave. And Kansas knew his valor when he fought her rights to save. And now, though the grass grows green above his grave, his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. He captured Harper's Ferry with his 19 men so few, and frightened old Virginia till she trembled through and through. They hung him for a traitor, themselves a traitorous crew, but his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. John Brown was John the Baptist, of the Christ we are to see. Christ who of the bondman shall the liberator be. And soon throughout the sunny South the slaves shall all be free, for his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. The conflict that he heralded, he looked from heaven to view on the army of the Union with its flag red, white, and blue. And heaven shall sing with anthems o'er the deed they mean to do, for his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. Soldiers of freedom, then strike while strike ye may, the death blow of oppression in a better time and way. The dawn of old John Brown has brightened into day, and his soul is marching on. marching on, for his soul